Question 1 on the ballot covers the Special Transportation Fund, known as the lockbox. Please tell us your thought on this ballot question. Do you think that tolls are the answer to improve Connecticut's infrastructure?
So the lockbox was originally legislation that David Scribner got passed. He was the ranking member of transportation before I was. Then Gail, myself, and Tony got the constitutional lockbox theory through the House and the Senate. We wanted a real lockbox. The majority party literally said, we don't want a real lockbox, we want to be able to rate it. It's been rated to the tune of somewhere between $650 and $1.5 billion by the majority party. I hate to keep saying that, but at the end of the day, when you don't control the keys, and the other side does, you literally aren't invited into the room, and they have been emptying out the lockbox. So this is a good step. Yes to the lockbox. Tolls is a different issue. Connecticut is much different. What I would entertain is if you do a one-lane public-private partnership on 95 in each direction, so that it's not built with union money, so you have a private company come in, they build one lane going north and one lane going south, and you toll that. If they build it, they control what it costs to go on it. They have to make their money back. I'm in favor of that. What I don't want to see happen with tolls is we have a $20 billion a year budget. It needs to be 17, okay? The reason why we have a constitutional spending cap that the majority fought for since 1990 is because of the bipartisan budget that was the basis of the Republican budget. And if it weren't for that, if that constitutional spending cap was in place back in the 90s when it was supposed to be, we wouldn't be in this mess that we're in right now because of the majority party. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Tartell.
I believe in the lockbox. Excuse me. You know, there are times you do inappropriate things. I believe in the lockbox, and I believe in tolls. Tolls give us the money and the income stream to take care of our transportation, both the mass transit and the roads and bridges that we have to fix. It gives you an operational stream of income that is guaranteed and focused and comes from people from outside the state. We are one of only, there are 42 states that have tolls, we do not. Tolls then give you a way with Easy Pass to take that money. You can have 2 levels of fares. I go to Long Island to see my mother-in-law and my mother every weekend. No Easy Pass, you get highest fare. Easy Pass, New York, you get a different fare. And I'm from Connecticut, I get the middle fare. You can do that. You can also do congestion pricing, so that if you leave for work at 5:45 in the morning to go towards New York, you're at a cheaper fare than if you leave at 6:15. So that gives you a way to manage the flow of cars where you don't need to put in a new lane. And I will remind you about Super 7 and what that meant for Wilton. So we've got lots of ways with Easy Pass, with tolls, to have a focused stream of income and to make a difference in a way that you can manage the infrastructure, but you don't need to change it significantly.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Lavielle.
Thank you. I've been a proponent of the lockbox, as Mr. O'Day said, for years. And I actually even introduced my own constitutional amendment resolution in 2015. So I wish the one that were on the ballot were stronger, but it has the merit of existing. Tolls, there's a couple of things I would say here. First, in response to Mr. Tartell, the only kind we can do is congestion pricing right now. But they can't be a short-term way of raising revenue simply because the DOT has told us it'll take several years to install them. For the near future, we've got revenue from a lot of sources: the gas tax, the gross receipts tax, a portion of the sales tax on new cars, as well as general obligation bond funding, all of which we used to not have rail fare hikes and service cuts last year. In the out years, we probably will see a big decline in gas tax revenues because there will be electric cars, there will be fuel-efficient cars, so on and so forth. At that point, we will need a new revenue source. So the smart thing for us to do now is scenario planning, is to develop a series of projections on market-driven gas tax revenue declines, estimating how much money will be needed each year, and then matching potential revenue sources, tolls, optional tolls, public-private partnerships, to see what the needs would be and evaluating them as a solution. And then in the event that they were to include tolls, it would only be in the
Time.
context of the natural disappearance of the gas tax.
I'm afraid that's time. Ms. Thomas?
I am very much in favor of the lockbox, but I also agree that it's not strong enough. We also need to think about, as I understand it, and perhaps everyone who has been in Hartford for a very long time can clarify, but as I understand, there's no provision in the constitutional amendment that would indicate what income is then put into that lockbox. So Hartford still can control whether the gas tax money goes there or certain other income streams. As Ms. Lavielle alluded to, I think that's all fine for right now, but a lot of the places we are getting revenue are going to cease to exist as we lessen our dependence on foreign oil, move toward electric, have more fuel-efficient vehicles, as we have shift to a millennial reality where people want to ride share and live in walkable cities. A lot of these revenue streams are drying up, which is why this is a national problem. You may recall President Trump ran on this issue of infrastructure because the income is drying up everywhere, and he proposed national tolling. I believe in tolls. My time is almost up. Like Mr. Tartell said, I believe out-of-state trucks and residents, people at the poverty level, et cetera, have special exceptions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Boucher?
3 individuals on this stage have been on the Transportation Committee and have all proposed lockboxes on state transportation funds. This became a real cause for many of us. And then it became a bipartisan idea when the governor wanted to institute tolls, and he found that a way maybe to persuade people is to convince them that they were going to not raid that fund anymore because it was constantly being raided. Well, I'll tell you, I had an interesting exchange with a constituent this weekend. She was a VA nurse, and she said, if you put in tolls, I have to cross that border every single day to help veterans. That would be devastating to me in my job. And that's individuals like that are telling me that that toll would be just another tax, taking money out of their disposable income, maybe $50 a week, $200 a month. Connecticut cannot afford tolls right now until it reduces some of the other costs. Let's talk about it if you reduce the gas tax. There's an 8% increase on your gas tax every single time you fill up. We have car property tax other states with tolls don't have. We have a myriad of other taxes that other states that don't have tolls. Let's talk about it if we restructure our tax policy. Right now, we've shown a way by prioritizing current bonding where we can increase investments in our infrastructure. What we really need to do is develop a short-term plan, a needs assessment for roads, rails, bridges, and ports, and a long-term strategic transportation plan that meets the needs of our business sector. And all of the stakeholders should be a part of that process. But right now, the last thing we need to do is increase the cost of our residents.
Okay, thank you. Was that time? Yes. Mr. Haskell?
Senator, respectfully, you're entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts. And you mentioned how much it would cost to cross the border every day. We don't even know where tolls would go yet. Connecticut is the only state between Maine and North Carolina that doesn't ask out-of-state drivers or trucking companies to contribute to the upkeep of our roads as they pass through our state, as they have a huge wear and tear on our infrastructure. This doesn't make us uniquely advantaged as taxpayers. It makes us uniquely disadvantaged because we bear the sole brunt of funding our roads. We sit here wondering why the trains are slower than they were in 1950, wondering why we have 302 structurally deficient bridges, and yet we're leaving money on the table, millions of dollars every year. Connecticut drivers paid $6 million to Massachusetts last year in tolls, and yet Massachusetts drivers paid not a cent to Connecticut. I absolutely support a transportation lockbox. A leaky bucket, I wish the statute, it sounds like we all wish the statutory language was stronger, but a leaky bucket is better than no bucket at all. But we have to raise revenue and be honest about exactly how we're going to fund our infrastructure, not by bonding out, but instead by raising the necessary revenue, by tapping into the out-of-state drivers and trucking companies that have a hugely negative impact on our infrastructure. We're a geographic hotspot between Boston and New York. They can't avoid Connecticut. And I don't know about you, I'm sick of driving on 95, seeing too many out-of-state plates and trucks that aren't contributing.
All right. At this point, we will go to rebuttal or extension. Is there anybody who wishes to do so? All right. Why don't I start with Ms. Boucher?
Yes, fact, I would beg to differ. In fact, there are wild estimates about how much tolls would bring in, anywhere from 400 million to even $1 billion, and no one really knows for sure. What we do know is that there could be 11 gantries from Bridgeport to Greenwich. There could be 12 of them in the same distance. In fact, it would increase the cost, and in fact, it has been shown that it could be at least $50 a week for people not going even across the border. This would really be damaging to the state at this point in time. There are other ways to do this. We've shown another pathway to do this, and in fact, our trucking industry pays $17 million a year just to cross the state without even stopping for filling up for gas. And by the way, their diesel tax is higher than any other state in the country.
All right, any other rebuttal or extension? All right.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Will. Sorry.
Just going to say, $17 million is, in the scheme of things, actually not that much in terms of our infrastructure needs. I understand, Senator, you've been recognized by the trucking industry as a distinguished legislator and that they're adamantly opposed to tolls, but ultimately they are having a hugely negative impact on our roads and bridges. And I would like to ask them for more, frankly, than $17 million. I think that most of the voters I talk to agree that it's time we actually invest in our trains. Look, we're the busiest commuter network in the country. The train, I keep saying this, I'll say it again, the train from Wilton to Manhattan has gotten slower since 1950, not faster. Too often what happens with tolls is opponents to any tolling proposal use scare tactics. They say that tolls are taxes. Tolls are user fees. If you take the train into New York every day, you have to pay for a ticket. I think the same should be asked of those who use our roads. They're not taxes, they're user fees. Let's acknowledge them as such and be honest about the fact that we don't know how much it would cost to travel to Stamford or into New York City because there isn't really a tolling proposal on the table yet.
All right. Is there any other rebuttal or extension? You've used your two. Sorry. Anybody? Yes, Ms. Lavielle?
Thank you. I always like to remind myself that this discussion of tolls that's been going on for many years, it's a legitimate discussion, is one of the few occasions where in my entire career, anywhere, doing anything, where I've ever heard of sort of raising a question and saying, we got to get some money, let's get some money, without saying how much money we need, what is the goal, what is the concrete objective. Instead, it's sort of this amorphous concept of abstract tolls. We don't have an objective for how much they'll bring in. We don't have an idea of what they will cost to you. And we don't know the full effect of the advantages you would get. So I can't vote for something that will make you spend money when I don't even know how much it is. If I know that, I'll be a lot better equipped. And I think that these discussions need to be a lot more concrete before we can do anything.
Okay, it's time, I'm afraid. Anything else? Any other rebuttal or extension?